How COVID-19 is changing people's religious habits. The main news story that I've specifically focused on is called More Prayer, Fewer Donations: How the Coronavirus is Changing People's Religious Habits by Kelsey Dallas. I chose to focus on this specific article because it discusses both positive and negative effects that coronavirus has on religion, but I also got information from other sources as well that will be listed at the end of this presentation. I'm going to begin with a summary of the news story that I chose. The religious practices of millions of people are undergoing profound changes in response to the pandemic to ultimately keep everyone safe and healthy. This story is just one of the many others that explain the impact COVID-19 has on religion. The article states that some Americans who rarely pray are reaching out to God for help. Research states that more than half of Americans have already done so. Although prayer is expanding during this crisis, donations are decreasing. It really shows how fear, economic pressure, and isolation affect religion. The news article also explains that more than 1/3 of Americans who believe in God say they've grown closer to God over these past few weeks. This is an interesting positive aspect about how the pandemic has affected people's connections to their religion. Although this is a difficult time, religion is a way that people are coping with the pandemic. Religious practices are a great way to cope with their anxiety and uncertainty that the outbreak has provoked. Further research in the news story shows that despite the increase in religious activity, unfortunately, there has not been a surge in church attendance online. This makes sense because it can be very confusing to figure out how to access church online and to figure out how to get the online programs to work. Another negative aspect that the news story mentions is that charitable giving is rapidly declining, which is very disappointing for pastors and religious communities. The story also notes how people are craving human connections and togetherness that congregations usually can provide. Religious gatherings online are not the same because there's no real-life connection between people and their faith. They make people feel isolated both physically and religiously. Overall, this news story, along with many others, summarizes that although there is more prayer happening, the coronavirus pandemic ultimately affects religion and religious activity in a negative way. In class, we recently had an online discussion about COVID-19 and its impact on religion. There was an article shared with us, and after reading it, we discussed if we thought that the coronavirus was coming between people and their faith. We went into depth about this topic, so my news story fits in with what we have already learned, but also adds different viewpoints and aspects on this topic. In class, I shared my opinion that the coronavirus is coming between people and their faith because they are not able to physically gather and practice their faith in groups due to social distancing. Others in our class agreed and said that performing rituals as a group is much more meaningful in person rather than online. The main news story that I chose to focus on supports the class argument that people need human connection for religious gatherings. However, the story does mention that more people, even non-religious people, are reaching out to God during this time, which has benefited people mentally and brought them closer to God, which is an interesting point that we did not recognize in class. We have also had many class discussions regarding rituals as well as sacred places and times, specifically during Week 8 online. The news stories I have looked at emphasize the importance of having sacred places to go to in order to practice rituals. With the pandemic, sacred places such as churches, temples, mosques, etc., that we learned about in class are shut down during this time, which is really hurting religious communities. People are performing rituals at home on their own time. But I have learned that a big part of religion is to share your faith and beliefs with a group in order to connect with each other. So unfortunately, it is evident that the virus is changing people's religious habits. There are many sacred places and important religious events that are prohibited during this time, which is unfortunate for the religious communities, but in my opinion, it is necessary to shut these places down for the safety and health of society. The following are important conclusion and discussion questions for the class. Do you think it is a fair safety measure to make church online and to shut down sacred places during this time? Why or why not? Do you think that the current COVID-19 pandemic will have an impact on religion in the future? How so?